The universe of the 41st millennium is a realm where even death is not always the end. Among the countless horrors of the Imperium of man, few are as tragic, as awe-inspiring, or as utterly terrifying as the life, or unlife, of a dreadnought. These massive walking sarcophagi of adamantium and ceramite stand as living relics of war, ancient warriors entombed within machines that can crush tanks and tear through alien monstrosities. But beneath the metal lies something far more haunting. The mind of a broken, half-dead space marine, chained between life and death for eternity. Imagine it. You are a mighty Astartes, a warrior of the Emperor, born and bred for battle. You've fought for centuries, your name sung across 100 worlds, your armor scarred from wars against heretics, xenos and demons. Then comes your final battle, your body shattered, organs ruined, lungs burned out by plasma, or your limbs torn apart by claws of some tyrannid beast. Normally, death would be your release. Your brothers would carry your body to the chapter's apothecarian, and your name would be etched into the Book of the Fallen. But not this time. Your chapter has need of you still. The apothecaries recover what remains, your broken torso, your brain, your heart, and they place you into the cold, humming tomb of a dreadnought. The machine closes around you, your flesh fusing with cables, your nerves plugging into data ports. You no longer breathe. You no longer bleed. Your senses are replaced by sensors, your voice by a vox speaker's roar. You are still alive, but you wish you weren't. Inside that armored shell, you feel every vibration of the machine. The distant hum of plasma coils becomes your heartbeat. The grinding of gears feels like your bones moving. Every time you awaken from the long sleep, your first sensation is pain, not from wounds, but from the crushing memory of what you once were. When the tech marines speak your name, your soul stirs. You hear the servos unlocking, the tomb opening, light flooding into your mechanical eyes. The chapter master stands before you, his voice solemn. Ancient, we have need of you. And like a ghost chained to duty, you rise once more. You walk the halls of the fortress monastery, your footsteps thunderous, your shadow immense. The young space marines stare in awe, some in fear. You remember when you were like them, filled with zeal and bloodlust, thinking you'd never die. Now you are a relic they worship, a reminder of their future, the final fate of every warrior who fights too long. When battle begins, you are unleashed. Heavy bolters roar from your arms. Your massive power fist crushes enemies like insects. You stride through fire and smoke, shrugging off weapons that would obliterate tanks. But the more you kill, the more you remember. You remember laughter, your brothers, your oaths, your life. And then you realize, all of that ended centuries ago, because time means nothing to you now. Between wars, you are placed in stasis, locked away in the vaults of the chapter. There you dream, if dreaming is even the right word. Your consciousness flickers in and out, floating in an endless dark void. Sometimes the machine whispers to you, the hum of the reactor, the whispers of machine spirits that have gone insane over millennia. Sometimes you hear the voices of the dead, or maybe they're just echoes of your own fractured mind. When you awaken again, centuries may have passed. The galaxy may have changed beyond recognition. The chapter you once fought for might be gone, merged or destroyed. Yet you are called forth again, to fight, to kill, to suffer. Your existence is eternal war, and your only rest is the cold embrace of stasis between battles. But the cruelest part of being a dreadnought is not the pain. It's the awareness. You remember being human, or at least you remember what it meant to feel. You can recall the warmth of a brother's hand on your shoulder, the sting of wind on your face, the pride of victory, all gone now, replaced by machinery and hollow echoes of sensation. You fight not because you want to, but because you have no choice. The Emperor's duty binds you tighter than any chains, and yet even within that iron tomb there is a kind of dignity. You are still a space marine. You are still the Emperor's warrior. In a galaxy where death is mercy, perhaps being a dreadnought and cursed, immortal and eternal, is the Emperor's final punishment and his greatest blessing. The ancient vaults of the chapter fortress monastery are silent. Beneath cathedrals of stone and iron, deeper than the catacombs of the dead, the dreadnoughts sleep. They are not dead, though some would call it mercy if they were. Within each sealed sarcophagus lies a warrior, a hero of forgotten wars, whose body has long rotted away, yet whose mind endures, suspended in the darkness of machine dreams. Inside one such tomb the warrior dreams. His name he no longer remembers. It has been erased by the passing of centuries, replaced by a title, Ancient. Once he was Brother Sergeant Lucian of the Blood Angels. Once he led squads of his brothers into glorious battle. Once he felt the warmth of the sun on Baal. Now, he feels nothing but the cold embrace of the machine that holds him captive. He dreams of blood, of burning skies, of the sound of bolters echoing through the void. He dreams of the day he fell, surrounded by the chittering hordes of the Tyranids, his armor torn open, his brothers screaming through vox channels filled with static. His last memory as a man was the smell of his own blood and the prayer whispered through broken teeth, "For the Emperor." Then came darkness and then the awakening. A tremor runs through the vaults. The machine spirits stir. The runes of activation glow upon the sarcophagus. The hum of plasma coils fills the air like the whisper of ancient ghosts. Tech Marines chant Binharic litanies, their voices merging with the clicking of servitors. Sparks flicker. Steam hisses. And deep within his steel tomb, the warrior opens his eyes and mechanical, red, glowing with the light of artificial life. Ancient Lucian, the chapter has need of you once more. A voice echoes through the vox. Distorted and distant, the words pierce the fog of his half-conscious mind. Duty, always duty. His world begins to rebuild itself in fragments. Fragments of pain, of memory, of obedience. The locking bolts release with a thunderous clang. His limbs, massive and armored, move with the weight of entire worlds. His vision floods with battle data and system reports. The machine's voice joins his own thoughts. Cold, emotionless, calculating, power core stable. Sarcophagus integrity, 98%. Weapon systems operational. And then comes the voice of his chapter master, as clear, commanding, yet filled with sorrow. Brother Lucian, awaken and serve the Emperor once more. Lucian's vox grill crackles to life, his voice now a booming roar of metal and memory. I hear and obey. He moves, each step shaking the ancient vaults. Dust falls from the ceiling as the great machine lumbers forward. The smaller figures of Tech Marines and servitors scatter before his immense bulk. His body is no longer his own, a fortress of ceramite and adamantium, armed with twin-linked lascannons and a power fist that could crush a tank. He walks toward the light, toward war, toward eternity. As he emerges into the fortress hall, hundreds of Space Marines kneel before him. Their armor gleams red and gold, their helmets bowed in reverence. They chant his name, not Lucian but Ancient. To them he is a relic, a living icon of the chapter's glory. They do not see the tortured mind within. They see only the legend, but Lucian sees everything. His optical sensors scan the ranks of young warriors, their faces filled with devotion and fear. He can almost feel their thoughts. Some wonder what it must be like to live forever in steel. Others dread that fate more than death itself. Lucian knows the truth, that the Dreadnought's immortality is a curse disguised as honor. He moves past them in silence. Each step echoes like thunder in the sacred hall. As he passes, the banners of the chapter sway in the wake of his movement. Crimson cloth depicting battles fought centuries ago, some of which he himself can dimly recall. The banners whisper to him of glory and sacrifice, but to him they speak of loss. He remembers his brothers, those who died long ago, their names etched upon the reclusium walls. He remembers the one who carried his broken body from the battlefield, tears mixing with blood as he begged forgiveness. That brother is long dead now, but Lucian still hears his voice in his dreams. He wonders how many centuries it has been. He wonders if the Emperor still remembers him. The march to war the Dreadnought is loaded into the drop bay of a strike cruiser, orbiting a dying world. The air reeks of incense and machine oil. Tech Marines prepare his weapons, while the chaplain performs rites of activation. The chaplain's crozius glows as he blesses the machine, whispering the ancient words, "May your flame never dim, Ancient One. May your wrath burn eternal in the Emperor's name." Lucian says nothing. He feels the power building inside him, the reactor hum filling the silence. The drop pod clamps around him, sealing him within darkness once more. A faint memory surfaces, the feeling of falling through the sky, the sound of bolter fire, the rush of wind. He used to love this. He used to feel alive. Now it is just another descent into hell the pod launches. The world outside blurs into fire. The descent burns through atmosphere, shaking the entire pod. He feels the heat, the vibration, the roar of engines. but not as a man would feel it. The machine translates it into data, into numbers, into meaningless streams of code. His human senses are gone, replaced by mechanical perception. He is a god of war, and yet he feels hollow. The impact comes with a seismic crash. The pod doors explode open. Smoke and debris fill the air. Lucian steps out into chaos, a battlefield drenched in blood and fire. Heretic banners burn in the distance. The traitors of the word-bearers march through ruined cathedrals, chanting blasphemies to their dark gods. The ground trembles as tanks fire, and the screams of the dying echo across the cityscape. Lucian's senses flood with target data. His rage, or what remains of it, ignites. He roars a sound that shakes the heavens. For the Emperor! His Liscannons cut through heretic armor like paper. Each beam of energy melts steel and flesh alike. His power fist crushes a Chaos Marine in one strike, reducing the traitor to a smear of gore and ceramite. The battlefield becomes his domain, a storm of destruction and holy wrath. He moves through the ruins like an unstoppable titan, his every step a hymn to vengeance. But amid the carnage, his mind drifts again. He remembers the last time he fought on this world. The buildings were whole then. The people still sang the Emperor's hymns. Now only ashes remain. Every war he fights blurs into the next. Every enemy bleeds the same. He cannot remember how many centuries have passed since his entombment. 1,000. 10,000? Does it even matter anymore? The heretics strike back. Plasma bolts hammer his armor. A missile slams into his left flank, tearing away a section of plating. Warning runes flare across his vision. The machine voice speaks. Damage sustained. Power redistribution recommended. Lucian ignores it. Pain is nothing. He has felt far worse. The pain of existence, the torment of memory. He crushes another Chaos Marine, his power fist glowing with energy. The blood splatters across his armor, hissing as it burns away. He laughs, a hollow mechanical sound, because for a brief moment the fury drowns out the emptiness. And then, silence. The battle ends as quickly as it began. The enemy retreats. The field is littered with corpses, loyal and heretic alike. Smoke rises from the ruins. The surviving Space Marines gather around him, offering praise and reverence. Ancient Lucian, they say, you have brought the Emperor's justice once more. He looks down at them. Children, all of them. Warriors who think death is glory. He knows better. Death is mercy. To die for the Emperor is to be free. To live for him, trapped within a tomb of iron, is to suffer forever. The silence. After when the battle is done, Lucian is returned to the ship. The Tech Marines chant prayers of maintenance as they patch his armor and seal the wounds of the machine. His systems begin to power down. The hum of life fades. The sarcophagus closes. Darkness returns, he whispers, though no one hears. I served. Again. Then comes the silence. In the still void of stasis, Lucian's thoughts drift like ghosts. He remembers his brother's laughter, the sunlight of Bel, the taste of wine before battle. He remembers the pain of his last breath as a man. And though he no longer has lungs to sigh, he feels the ache of longing for something he can never have again, the peace of death. In this silence, the machine dreams too. Its ancient spirit hums beneath his own thoughts, merging with his soul. Over centuries they have become one, man and machine intertwined, neither whole. The Dreadnought is no longer just a weapon. It is a prison of two minds forever at war with each other. The Dreadnought slumbers again. Within the vaults of the strike cruiser Sanguine Wrath, he rests among the dead, a slumbering god in a tomb of metal. His outer armor bears the scars of battle, burn marks from plasma fire, gouges from chain axes, and the holy sigils of the Mechanicus etched over wounds that will never fully heal. The machine sleeps, but the man inside never truly does. Inside the sarcophagus, Lucian's mind flickers between memories and madness. Dreams are no longer his own. They are visions half-formed from the machine spirit's murmurs, distorted by the passage of centuries. Sometimes he dreams of Baal, its red sands beneath twin suns. Other times he dreams of the void, cold, endless, and whispering his name. But recently there are new dreams. Voices whisper in the darkness. They are not his brothers, nor are they the blessed hymns of the Mechanicus. These voices are cold and mocking, echoing through his consciousness like oil through water. You are not alive, Ancient. You are a ghost that refuses to fade. Lucian tries to shut them out, but there is no silence inside his tomb. The machine hums with the life of the ship, the echo of reactor cores, and the mechanical breathing of servitors. Yet the voice persists. You call this duty. You call this honor. You rot inside a coffin, forgotten until your masters need your wrath again. Lucian's internal systems flare, emotion detected, stress rising. The Tech Marine's maintenance rites never purge the soul completely. The machine spirit is not a tool. It is alive, ancient, willful, sometimes defiant, and Lucian has begun to suspect that his own tomb houses more than just his body. Something else watches him from the dark corners of the machine's mind. Be silent, Lucian growls through Vox feedback, though no one can hear him. His words echo only in his own mind, bouncing back like prayers unanswered, awakening the ancient. The silence is broken when alarms blare across the sanguine wrath. Red light floods the vaults. Through the walls of his tomb, Lucian senses the shift in gravity, the vibrations of weapons fire, and the distant toll of war horns. The ship is under attack. His sarcophagus lights flare to life. Activation rites commencing. Reactor ignition. Machine spirit, awakened. Lucian's thoughts merge again with the machine's systems. Information floods his mind. Power readings, atmospheric pressure, enemy contact signatures. He feels every cable, every servo, every plate of armor, as if it were flesh and bone. His consciousness expands into the machine. He is the machine. Ancient Lucian, the voice of a tech marine, crackles through the Vox. Xenos boarding parties have breached the lower decks. Your strength is required. He doesn't respond immediately. The machine spirit whispers again, faint but venomous. They will wake you only to kill. They always do. Lucian pushes back the thought and answers. For the Emperor. I serve. The locks disengage with thunderous force. His tomb opens to the clang of gears and the hiss of steam. The ground trembles as the Dreadnought steps forth, massive, towering, his armor glinting beneath crimson emergency lights. The tech marines and servitors kneel, chanting blessings as they ready his weapons. Lucian feels the old energy returning. The rage, the clarity of purpose. In war there is no confusion, only order, only obedience. Battle in the dark corridors. The lower decks of the sanguine wrath are chaos incarnate. The corridors burn with flickering light as tyrannid bio-creatures tear through bulkheads. Screams of dying crew echo through the iron halls. Blood stains the walls. Lucian's footfalls thunder through the smoke. The deck plates quake under his weight. Contact with the Xenos confirmed. He growls into the Vox, his voice like rolling thunder. A swarm of Genestealers bursts from a side passage, claws dripping, eyes glowing with alien hunger. They leap at him, dozens at once, but Lucian meets them with a fury that only a Dreadnought can unleash. His assault cannon spins, roaring like a storm, shredding the front ranks into ribbons of flesh. His power fist crushes another, splattering ichor across the ceiling. But for every creature he kills, two more emerge. They swarm up his legs, tearing at his armor, screeching and hissing. The machine spirit screams with static fury. Lucian roars back, channeling the pain into righteous destruction. He slams into the wall, crushing half a dozen of them in a single motion. Come then, beasts, let me show you the Emperor's wrath. The words echo through the Vox, half prayer, half defiance. His heavy flamer ignites, washing the corridor in liquid fire. The tyrannids burn and melt, their screams drowned in the roar of flames. The smell of scorched chitin fills the air, then is silence. The battle is over. Smoke curls from his weapons. His armor drips with acid blood. He surveys the carnage and feels in nothing. Not pride, not victory, only emptiness. The ghost in the machine as the tech marines secure the decks, Lucian returns to his holding chamber. But even before his systems enter stasis, the whispering returns, louder now, mocking. You kill and you burn. But for what? You don't even remember why you fight anymore. Lucian's optical sensors flicker. His power readings spike. He tries to isolate the source of the interference, but it's not coming from the ship. It's coming from inside. You think you are still Lucian, but Lucian died centuries ago. What's left is me. The realization hits him like a thunderstrike. The voice isn't a demon. It isn't an enemy signal. It's the machine spirit, the half-sentient essence of the Dreadnought itself. Over the centuries, their minds have merged, their thoughts intertwined until neither is fully separate. Lucian shouts within the void of his mind, "I am no machine. I am a son of Sanguinius." The voice laughs, a distortion of static and memory. "You are nothing but echoes, human. You borrow my strength and I feed on your pain. Together we are neither man nor machine, only a monster that cannot die." Lucian feels his reactor thrum with anger. The lights in his sarcophagus flicker. For the first time, he wonders if the machine spirit is right. Each century has taken something from him. His memories, his emotions, his name. Perhaps he has already become the very thing he fears. An empty weapon, a ghost bound in iron. He recalls a moment long ago, his rebirth after his mortal body was shattered. He had begged them not to entomb him. He had cried out to die a man, not live as a machine. But they did not listen. The apothecaries called it salvation. The chaplains called it duty. Now he knows the truth. It was damnation. The fracture time has no meaning within the Dreadnought's tomb. Hours, days, even years blur together, in the endless rhythm of sleep and war. Lucian drifts between dreams and reality until the line between them disappears. Sometimes he hears voices from the past, his brothers calling out, their laughter before battle. Other times he hears only the whispering of the machine, tempting him to surrender what little humanity he has left. Let go. The pain will end when you stop pretending to be human. He resists. Every prayer, every oath, every memory of the Emperor's light becomes his shield. "I will never yield," he vows, though the words feel hollow. "So long as my heart beats, I am his servant." "You have no heart," the voice replies coldly. "Only a power core that burns your soul a little more each day. The silence that follows is worse than the taunting." In that stillness, Lucian realizes something terrifying. He can no longer recall the faces of his battle brothers. Their voices are fading. Their names are ash. Only the machine remains constant, whispering, breathing, watching. Echoes of humanity centuries later, or perhaps mere days, Lucian is awoken again for another war. Another planet, another meaningless slaughter. But this time, as his pod descends through the clouds, he whispers a prayer not of vengeance but of remembrance. "Emperor, let me see the sky one last time. Let me feel the light, if only in memory." For a moment, the storm outside breaks. The clouds part, revealing sunlight piercing through smoke. He stares at it through lenses of steel, and for that brief instant, he almost feels human again. Then the drop pod strikes the ground. The war begins anew. Inside the sarcophagus of a dreadnought, time has no meaning. Days, years, and centuries blend into one endless stretch of consciousness, trapped inside a coffin of ceramite and steel. For the warrior within, the body may have died long ago. But the mind, the soul, the pain, all remain horrifyingly alive. When the dreadnought is at rest, he is not truly sleeping. His mind drifts between the waking world and the nightmare realm of his fading humanity. Dreams come rarely, but when they do, they are cruel. He sees the battlefields of his past, his brothers shouting war cries, the flash of bolter fire, the stench of burning flesh. He remembers what it felt like to run, to feel the weight of armor on living muscles, to breathe air filled with promethium smoke and glory. Then he wakes again to the suffocating silence of his iron tomb, and the realization that he no longer has lungs, no heart, no flesh. Only machinery humming endlessly around his brain. Every dreadnought dreads one thing above all, the waiting. When a battle ends, they are returned to their sarcophagus chambers, dark catacombs deep within the fortress monastery. There, rows of ancient dreadnoughts stand motionless, powered down, stored like relics of war. Tech marines and servitors maintain their stasis pods, whispering prayers in the machine tongue to keep their spirits bound to the sacred engines. Some have slumbered for millennia, only to be reawakened for the most dire wars. Imagine the horror of consciousness that cannot die, forced to awaken only when there is blood to be shed. Our dreadnought has no peace, no life beyond war. He exists only to destroy until even the machine spirit within his shell begins to resent the slaughter. The longer they remain entombed, the more fragmented their humanity becomes. Voices echo. In their minds, the whispers of long-dead comrades, the screams of their own past selves. Some begin to confuse reality with memory. A dreadnought may awaken on a new battlefield and think he's fighting a war from 10,000 years ago. The chaplains call it spiritual drift, a madness born of endless existence. Yet, to their chapter, these tortured giants are sacred relics, honored heroes whose wisdom and wrath are eternal. The irony is cruel. The same warriors who once laughed, trained, and fought beside mortal brothers are now worshipped like demigods while suffering unimaginable torment inside their metal prisons. When a dreadnought is deployed, the awakening ritual begins with reverence and fear. Tech Marines chant Binharic litanies as sacred oils are poured over the sarcophagus. Red-robed priests invoke the Omnissiah, while chaplains recite the canticles of rebirth. The power feeds reconnect, hydraulics hiss, and slowly, ancient eyes of crimson light flicker open. "I hear the drums of war again," the dreadnought murmurs, voice deep and echoing through vox distortion. His mind struggles to bridge the gap between centuries of slumber and the present. For him, every awakening feels like resurrection, and every battle a reminder that he cannot truly die. When unleashed on the battlefield, he becomes death incarnate. Bolter rounds the size of a man's head explode from his arm-mounted weapons, tearing apart heretics and Xenos alike. His power fist can crush tanks, his flamestorm cannons reduce entire squads to ash. Yet for every enemy he slaughters, part of him weeps in silence. Because behind every thunderous step, every servo hiss, lies a consciousness screaming in agony, wishing for the release of death that never comes. Sometimes during the chaos of war, a dreadnought will take a hit that cripples his frame. When his systems fail, he can hear the alarms shrieking, the coolant boiling, the machine spirit wailing. Pain floods his remaining senses, not the pain of flesh, but something worse, a burning static that invades his mind, making him relive every death he's ever seen. Yet even as his body burns, the sarcophagus keeps him alive. It refuses to let go. There are rare times when a dreadnought speaks freely, usually to a chaplain or a tech marine who tends to him in the lonely hours of stasis. Their words are not always coherent, often fragmented between memory and madness. "Do you still hear the music, brother? The war drums, and they never stop. Was I the one who burned the heretics, or were they the ones who burned me? I dreamt once of oceans, but I no longer remember what water feels like." Some chapters record these words as sacred scripture, believing they carry divine wisdom. Others hide them, fearing that such truths could shatter the faith of younger warriors. In some tragic cases, when a dreadnought's mind breaks completely, he becomes a danger to his own brothers. The machine spirit consumes the remnants of his humanity, turning him into a berserker, a cursed dreadnought. These rare abominations must be put down with great sorrow, entombed deeper than the deepest vaults, sealed away forever with prayers and tears. And yet, no matter the cost, no chapter would ever abandon their dreadnoughts. Because within each, one lies not just a warrior, but the soul of the chapter itself, a living reminder of their sacrifices, victories, and eternal duty. Some say that the Emperor himself watches over these fallen heroes, granting them the strength to continue their service even in undeath. Others whisper darker things, that perhaps the Emperor is deaf to their suffering, that their immortality is not a gift, but a curse bound by the Imperium's desperate need for war. Still, even knowing this, none would refuse the honor of becoming one. To die in battle is to serve the Emperor, to live eternally as his instrument of wrath. That is the fate of the greatest among his sons. So when the next war bell tolls, and the sarcophagus seals open, the dreadnought's voice echoes once more. "I am awake, I am pain, I am vengeance everlasting." And with thunderous steps, the living tomb walks again. The battlefield is alive with fire, blood, and screams. In the center of it all, the dreadnought moves like a walking god of death, a relic of ancient wars, a fusion of man, machine, and vengeance. But beneath the roar of his assault cannons and the hiss of hydraulic limbs, there is something more horrifying, a whisper deep within the iron coffin. It's the echo of a dying man, still trapped in eternal war. When the call to battle comes, there is no hesitation. The tech marines awaken the dreadnoughts with sacred rites and machine hymns, their hands trembling as they press the activation runes. The sarcophagus groans, ancient pistons shudder, and crimson light floods the chamber. For a brief awful moment, silence reigns, and then the giant exhales steam and fury for the Emperor, and for my brothers who are dust. The Dreadnought's vox roars, shaking the hangar. Yet within that voice, buried beneath layers of distortion, there's grief, a sorrow so vast it drowns thought, because the warrior who speaks is not truly alive. He is memory given metal form. When the drop pods slam into enemy soil, they strike like meteors. The hatches burst open and the Dreadnought emerges, towering above mortal soldiers. Enemy fire batters against his armor, but he strides forward, unrelenting. Every servo joint hums like a choir of wrath. Every step crushes skulls and bones beneath tons of ceramite. His heavy flamer turns bunkers into infernos. His assault cannon tears through tanks like paper. From the outside, he is unstoppable. From the inside, he is screaming. Each battle is a sensory storm. He feels the machine spirit's hunger for destruction. It pulses through his neural cables, urging him to kill, to burn, to annihilate. The line between his will and the machines grows thinner with each kill. He remembers the teachings of his chapter. The flesh is weak, but the soul endures. Yet now, as the machine guides his every motion, he wonders, am I still me, or am I just another weapon? Every Dreadnought knows the danger of fusion, when man and machine merge too completely. At first it makes him faster, stronger, more efficient, but soon his thoughts begin to blur. The rage of the machine spirit bleeds into his mind. He begins to enjoy the killing, not for justice, not for duty, but for the satisfaction of destruction itself. And that's when the line breaks. There are moments when even the Dreadnought fears himself. When he looks down at his massive hands, slick with the blood of enemies, and sometimes allies, and wonders if he's become the monster the Imperium warned him of. He remembers being human once. He remembers laughter, brotherhood, pain, victory. Now all that remains is the mission, the endless mission. They said I would be eternal, he murmurs through the vox, his voice echoing across the battlefield. They didn't tell me eternal meant alone. The Dreadnought's battlefield fury is not just mechanical efficiency, it's a howl of anguish. He fights with the strength of 10 men, but with the grief of 1,000 souls. Every shell fired is a memory destroyed. Every victory is another reminder that he cannot die. Sometimes in the heat of battle, his old instincts flicker through. He'll shout names, the names of long-dead brothers. Brother Cassiel. Flank left. Sergeant Marius, the ridge. The ridge. No, no, where are you all? But there is no answer, only static and the roar of bolter fire. To the younger space marines fighting alongside him, he is a legend. They chant hymns of glory when he passes, calling him Ancient, Venerable One, Father of War. But if they could hear the thoughts inside that metal tomb, they would fall to their knees, not in worship but in horror, because their hero is not a god. He is a ghost begging for release. The Dreadnought's presence changes the tide of every battle. Enemies flee at the sound of his approach, the thunder of his steps echoing like a death knell. Yet victory means nothing to him. When the smoke clears and the last foe falls, he stands alone amid the ruins, surrounded by corpses, mortal and immortal alike. The servitors come later, dragging his massive frame back to the fortress monastery, his armor scorched, his joints locked with dried gore. He is lowered once again into the cold embrace of the stasis vaults. The tech marines recite the litanies of rest, sealing him away with reverence. But as the power fades and the world grows quiet, his thoughts linger in the dark. He replays every death, every scream. He wonders if this is what the Emperor intended, for his sons to live forever as prisoners of steel. And deep within the sarcophagus, the last fragments of his humanity whisper, I would give anything to feel the wind again. Yet no wind will ever touch him. No sun will ever warm his face. Only the hum of machinery, the pulse of the reactor that keeps his shattered body alive. This is the paradox of the Dreadnought, a hero immortalized in metal, yet condemned to eternal suffering. He is the Imperium's mightiest weapon, and its cruelest tragedy. The Adeptus Mechanicus call it the blessed symbiosis. The chaplains call it eternal duty, but among the Dreadnoughts themselves, if they could speak freely, they would call it what it truly is, the endless war, and still they march, because they must, because there is no rest for those who have been bound to the Emperor's will. Their faith is their prison, their honor their torment. So when the alarms sound again and the priests come with their oil and prayers, the giant will awaken once more. His crimson eyes will open to the same world of fire and death, and his voice will echo like thunder. I am the wrath of the Emperor. I am his undying rage. But in the silence that follows, there is always another voice, and quieter, broken, human. Please, let me sleep. When the thunder of battle fades and the smoke clears, the world grows unnervingly still. The great machine giants of the Imperium are returned to their vaults, their engines cooling, their spirits silenced. Deep within the fortress monasteries of 1,000 space marine chapters, among the cathedrals of stone and steel, the Dreadnoughts are laid to rest once more. They call this time the silence between wars. The massive vault doors close with a sound like the final toll of a bell. The chanting of the tech marines fades, replaced by the soft, eternal hum of stasis fields. Within the sarcophagi, the once mighty warriors are locked in stillness, neither alive nor dead, forever dreaming in metal tombs. But dreams are a dangerous thing for those who cannot die. Inside the dark shell of the Dreadnought, flickers of life pulse through what remains of a broken body. Tubes and cables connect to desiccated flesh, keeping the heart beating, keeping the mind awake, barely. The warrior's consciousness drifts between worlds, half in the machine, half in the past, and in that limbo he dreams. At first, the dreams are memories, the laughter of his brothers in the training halls, the scent of oil and incense, the clash of chainswords under twin suns. He dreams of honor, of triumph, of the Emperor's light shining upon him. But slowly, like a spreading stain, the dreams change. The laughter turns to screams. The light becomes fire. The faces of his brothers twist into masks of pain and betrayal, because that is what memory becomes when it has nowhere to go. It rots. He dreams of the last day he walked as a man. The moment when the bolter shell tore through his armor, when his body fell into the dirt, when he looked up at the crimson sky and knew he was dying. He remembers the voices shouting for a medic, the prayers, the pain, the fear. He remembers the chaplain's voice, calm, cold, saying, "He will serve still." Then came the darkness. Then came the machine. Now as he sleeps in stasis, he feels the phantom pain of limbs he no longer has. He feels his lungs burn, though they are long gone. He feels his heart race when there is no blood to pump. His mind, half human and half mechanical, loops endlessly through fragments of a life that no longer belongs to him. Sometimes he sees the Emperor in his dreams, golden, radiant, reaching out a hand. But when he grasps it, the light turns to rust and ash. The Emperor's face becomes a cracked mask of bone, and a whisper fills the void. "You are my weapon, and weapons do not rest." The Dreadnought jerks awake within his stasis pod. For a moment, he thinks he's back on the battlefield. But there is no sound, no fire, only the cold hum of machinery. The stasis field flickers, and he senses the tech marines beyond the walls tending to other relics. They speak in binary prayers, their words muffled through layers of iron. He tries to speak, to call out, but his vox emitter is sealed. His voice is trapped within the coffin of his own mind. How long has it been? A decade? A century? Time has no meaning in the silence between wars. Some Dreadnoughts lose themselves completely during these long slumbers. When they are finally reawakened, their minds have fractured. Lost in endless cycles of dream and nightmare, they speak in riddles, quote scriptures that no one remembers, call out to brothers who died millennia ago. The tech marines call this machine corruption, but the truth is far crueler. It's not the machine that corrupts. It's the human mind breaking under eternity. There are others, the venerables, whose willpower endures even the ages. They remain lucid, calm, patient. They meditate on the Emperor's glory, reciting prayers within their sarcophagus to pass the centuries. Yet even they admit there are moments of weakness, moments when they feel their humanity slipping away like sand through a steel fist. In one of those rare moments of lucidity, our Dreadnought, once known as Brother Ehcoes, reflects on his existence. He remembers his oaths, his deeds, his victories. He tries to believe it was worth it. But then he hears it, and faint, distant, almost like a heartbeat, a whisper, a name. Ehcoes? He knows that voice. It's his old captain, the one who ordered him to hold the line during the siege of Daraxis, the one who died screaming as the enemy breached the gate. But it cannot be. His captain has been dust for 10,000 years. Still the whisper comes again. Ehcoes, wake up. The sarcophagus hums. The stasis field flickers once more. For a heartbeat, he wonders if he's dreaming again, or if something else is reaching through the veil. He sees flashes, fire, blood, demons writhing through broken cities. The warp presses against his mind, its tendrils creeping through cracks in his sanity. In the silence of the vaults, the Dreadnoughts are not entirely alone. Sometimes the warp whispers through the metal, testing, tempting. "You could be free," it says. "You could feel again." He recoils from the voice, forcing himself to recite the litany of endurance. The words are jagged in his mind, but they keep him tethered. He cannot fall. He must not. The Emperor demands his vigilance, even in stillness. Outside, centuries pass. Empires rise and fall. Planets burn and are rebuilt. The galaxy shifts, but the Dreadnoughts remain unmoving, timeless sentinels of a decaying Imperium. They are monuments to humanity's greatest sin, the sin of never letting go. Sometimes tech marines come to tend his systems. He feels their presence like ghosts, tiny, fragile creatures moving around his vast form. They clean his joints, anoint his armor with sacred oils, whisper to his machine spirit. He listens wordless as they speak of new crusades, new wars, new enemies. The galaxy is still burning and he is still waiting. He knows that one day they will come for him again. They will unseal the sarcophagus, chant the rite of awakening, and his systems will surge to life once more. He will see war again, smell the ash and the blood, and when that day comes, he will march once more for the Emperor, because he must, because that is all that remains of him. But until then he dreams of the stars, cold, distant, eternal. He dreams of standing on a green world under a warm sun, feeling the wind on his face. He dreams of his brothers, laughing as they march to glory. He dreams of dying, truly dying, and finding peace at last. But peace is the one thing the Imperium will never allow. In the silence between wars, the Dreadnoughts wait, an army of sleeping titans, their minds caught between prayer and madness. The world outside forgets their suffering, calling them heroes, saints, relics. Yet deep within their cold metal shells, the truth festers. They are not immortal. They are prisoners of eternity. And when the next war begins, and as it always does, their torment will begin anew, because in the Imperium of man there is no rest. Only war forever. For centuries Brother Ehcoes had slumbered. He had dreamed of death and prayed for silence, but silence never lasts in the Imperium. When the klaxon screamed through the fortress vaults, his dreams shattered like glass. The rite of awakening had begun once more. Runes flickered to life across his sarcophagus, and the sacred oils ran down his armored limbs. Servo arms hissed as clamps released, and the voice of a tech marine echoed through the chamber like the toll of fate. By the will of the Omnissiah and the command of the chapter, rise again, Brother Ehcoes. The Imperium calls. At first he resisted. His machine spirit growled reluctant, ancient pistons groaning in protest. Every inch of his armor ached as if metal could feel pain. But the words of the litany pressed upon his consciousness, and duty drowned out his yearning for rest. His reactor heart ignited. The vault shook, and the Dreadnought opened his eye once more. Through the haze of data streams and machine prayers, he beheld the world anew. It had changed, always it changed. New banners, new wars, new faces, and yet nothing was truly different. The galaxy still burned, and the Imperium still bled. "What war calls me this time?" His voice thundered through the vox. "Chaos," replied the tech marine solemnly. "A demon incursion on the world of Belthane IV. The chapter marches. We need your strength, Ancient One." Ehcoes was silent for a long moment. He had fought chaos before, again and again across millennia. He had seen the same madness wear different faces, cultists, traitors, heretics, demons. All of them spawned from the same endless corruption, and he had learned one truth. You can never truly kill chaos. It is not an enemy you destroy. It is a disease that feeds upon humanity itself. Still, his duty was clear. He would march again. The fortress gates opened, and Ehcoes stepped out beneath a sky torn by fire. Dropships screamed overhead, their contrails bleeding across the heavens. The air smelled of promethium and prayer. Around him, space marines of his chapter prepared for war, their blue and gold armor gleaming under the dying sun. They looked up at him in reverence. To them he was not a monster or a relic. He was a legend, living proof that death was not the end. The chaplain raised his crozius and intoned, Brothers, behold the will of the Emperor made steel. Ancient Ehcoes walks with us once more. Their voices roared in unison. For the Emperor! For the Imperium! If Ehcoes could still feel pride, he might have felt it then. But what he felt was something darker, an ache, deep and hollow. He envied their humanity, their mortality. They did not yet know what eternity felt like. The drop pod slammed into the ground with the force of a meteor. Dust and fire consumed the horizon as Ehcoes emerged, his footsteps cracking the stone beneath him. His senses adjusted to the chaos of battle. Bolter fire, demon shrieks, the burning wails of the dying. And then he saw them. The enemy, demons of Nurgle, bloated and laughing, oozing rot and corruption. The air itself curdled in their presence, reality bending like molten glass. He had fought them before, 1,000 times, and each time they seemed worse, as if the warp remembered every wound and fed upon it. By the machine and by the man, purge the unclean, he growled. His heavy flamer roared to life, bathing the horrors in white-hot fire. Their screams echoed not just through the air, but through his mind. Every time he killed them, they whispered, "Welcome back, old friend. You never left us." Ehcoes crushed them underfoot, smashing flesh and metal alike, but the whispers remained, taunting, knowing. Chaos did not fear him. Chaos pitied him. To the demons he was one of them, a soul trapped beyond life, bound by suffering, feeding on duty like a curse. Am I any different? He thought as he tore a plague-bearer apart. I fight, I sleep, I wake, I fight again. For whom? For what? A burst of psychic energy slammed into him. His systems flickered. Warning screamed across his display. The air shimmered, and before him appeared a greater demon, its form shifting like disease incarnate. "Hold, warrior," it gurgled. "You reek of the Emperor's rot. Even your soul decays in that coffin." Ehcoes fired his lascannon, the beam slicing through the demon's midsection, but it only laughed. "You think your faith saves you? It binds you. You are his corpse walking." The words burned deeper than any weapon could. For a heartbeat, he saw himself not as a hero, but as a carcass, a remnant of flesh encased in dead metal, serving a god who would never release him. "Silence, heretic," he growled. "I am the Emperor's wrath made manifest." "Then feel his mercy," the demon whispered and lunged. They clashed like gods, fire and pestilence, steel and filth. The ground split beneath them. Around them, space marines fought and died, their cries drowned by the roar of titans. Finally, with a roar that shook the sky, Ehcoes drove his power fist through the demon's chest. Warp ichor exploded outward, dissolving into green mist. The beast's body crumbled, leaving only its laughter behind. "See you in the next war," it hissed. Hours passed. The enemy was purged. The ground steamed with the residue of the warp. Ehcoes stood amidst the ruin, his armor dripping with oil and blood. The chaplain approached him, holding his croziers high. "The Emperor's will is done," the chaplain said proudly. "We are victorious," but Ehcoes felt no victory. Only the slow sinking realization that this endless cycle, was all there would ever be. War was not a duty anymore. It was a sentence, and the Emperor was his warden. He gazed at the burning horizon and whispered more to himself than anyone else. "How many times must I die for victory to mean something?" No one answered. In the distance, thunder rolled, or perhaps it was artillery. The sky above was dark, but somewhere beyond the clouds the stars still burned, and in that light Ehcoes saw the truth. The Imperium did not fight for victory. It fought to survive another day, and as long as the galaxy endured, so too would he, the immortal prisoner, the eternal warrior, the Dreadnought. For there was no end. No peace, only war forever. The world of Beltane the Fool was ashes. The banners had fallen, the demons had fled, and silence finally returned. But for Brother Ehcoes, silence was not peace. It was a wound that never healed. In the aftermath of battle, the Dreadnought stood motionless amid the smoking ruins of a once holy city. His armor was scarred, his joints screamed with mechanical agony, and the oil that dripped from his limbs looked like blood in the firelight. Around him, the surviving tech marines murmured the litany of preservation, sealing his systems for transport. But Ehcoes no longer listened. He was lost within his own mind, the sarcophagus, the tomb, the prison. Inside the armored shell, His broken body floated in nutrient fluid, surrounded by cables and needles that pierced what little flesh remained. Each pulse of his reactor heart sent pain rippling through his nerves, a constant reminder that he still lived, though he had long forgotten why. How many centuries has it been? He wondered. How many wars? He tried to remember his name, the one he had before the armor, before the machine. It came to him faintly, like a dream half-remembered. Ehcoes, brother Ehcoes of the Third Company. Once that name had meant something. Once he had laughed with his brothers, trained beneath the rising suns of a distant world, and prayed to the Emperor not out of fear, but faith. Now his prayers were echoes, and his faith felt like rust. The fortress monastery's forges glowed red as the tech marines worked to repair him. Sparks rained down, hissing against his armor. Servo arms crawled over his frame like insects, hammering, welding, whispering binary prayers. "Your duty is eternal, Ancient One," said Magos Halix, the senior tech marine. "The flesh is weak. The machine endures. You are proof of that truth." Ehcoes' vox sputtered, his voice a grinding echo. "Endures? Or rots slower?" The Magos paused, one mechanical eye whirring toward him. "Blasphemy is unbecoming of a hero." "Hero?" Ehcoes rumbled. "Heroes die. I have forgotten how." The tech marine did not answer. He merely resumed his work, his silence heavier than any argument. When the repairs were complete, Ehcoes was placed once more into the stasis vault. The chamber hummed with sacred energy, its walls lined with relics of ages long gone. Banners of victories no one remembered, skulls of brothers whose names had faded from history, the doors sealed. Darkness returned, and Ehcoes dreamed again. But this time the dreams were not of battle, they were of before. He saw the faces of his battle brothers as they once were. Living men laughing, shouting, swearing oaths of loyalty beneath a burning sky. He saw his captain, stern yet proud. He saw the chaplain, preaching courage. He saw himself young and unscarred, lifting his bolter for the first time. Then the dream turned sour. Their faces melted, their flesh twisted, their laughter turned to screams. He watched them die, and not once, but 1,000 times over and over again, as if the warp itself mocked him with memories. He tried to wake. He tried to scream, but the sarcophagus does not let you wake, and so in that eternal dark, he began to lose pieces of himself, memory after memory, emotion after emotion, like gears grinding to dust. When next he awoke, it was not to battle but to a voice. "Ehcoes, can you hear me?" It was soft, human, a voice not of command but of compassion. It belonged to a young Lex mechanic, a novice assigned to monitor his stasis systems. Her name was Lyra. Unlike most of the tech priests, she still possessed warmth in her tone. "You've been asleep for 87 years, she said, typing data into her console. "The chapter has changed much in your absence. 87. His vox crackled. "I dreamed it was longer," she smiled faintly. "You're still in fine condition. The Magos says your spirit remains strong." "My spirit," he murmured, "is all that's left." Lyra hesitated, then spoke softly. "Do you ever wish you could rest?" The question stunned him. None had ever asked that before. "Rest? To rest is to abandon duty. And duty is all I am. But isn't duty supposed to end one day?" she whispered. "Even saints die. Even stars fade." He almost laughed. A hollow, metallic sound that echoed through the vault. "Then the Emperor has forgotten to let me die." Lyra said nothing more, but he could sense her pity, and it terrified him more than any demon ever had. Years passed. Wars raged and ended. Generations of space marines came and went, but Ehcoes endured. He was awakened again and again and again, each time to a new battlefield, a new cause, a new commander who barely remembered the last. His chapter changed insignia, doctrine, even homeworld, but he remained the same, the unchanging relic, so the eternal weapon. And every time he woke, the galaxy seemed darker. The Imperium he fought for was crumbling. Planets burned by its own hand, inquisitors purging in the Emperor's name, entire worlds vanishing into the warp. The faith that once inspired him now felt hollow, a chant recited by machines. On his 139th awakening, during the purge of Corvain Reach, something inside him finally cracked. The enemy that day was not chaos. It was rebellion. Human against human. The heretics were simple colonists who had refused a tithe. When the order came to burn the city, Ehcoes hesitated. He scanned the streets, civilians running, children clutching relics, voices crying not in hatred but in fear. "These are not foes," he said through the vox. "They are Imperial." The captain's reply was cold. "They are faithless." "Execute the order." He stood motionless as the other space marines advanced. Fire filled the sky. The screams rose higher, and in that moment Ehcoes felt something he had not felt in 1,000 years. Doubt. That night, when the battle was done, he stood among the ruins of the burned city. The air smelled of ash and flesh. He saw a small figure moving among the rubble, a child clutching a small wooden effigy of the Emperor. She looked up at the towering Dreadnought, eyes wide, not with hate but with sorrow. "Why?" she whispered. "You were supposed to save us." Ehcoes had no answer. For the first time in centuries, he turned his gaze toward the heavens and felt, truly felt, the crushing weight of what he had become. Not a hero, not a savior, just a weapon, blind and obedient, waging endless war for masters who no longer remembered mercy. He fell to one knee, his massive frame shaking the ground. "Emperor," he whispered, "can you still hear me? Have I done right? Or have I become the monster I swore to destroy?" The only reply was static, and in that silence something within him began to break. When he returned to the fortress, the chaplain greeted him with ceremony. "The Emperor smiles upon you, brother." "Another victory." Ehcoes' voice was low and hollow. "Does he smile or merely stare?" The chaplain frowned. "Watch your words, Ancient One. Doubt is the weapon of the enemy." "I have seen the enemy," Ehcoes said. "He wears many faces. Some wear yours." The chaplain raised his crozius, anger flaring. "You tread on dangerous ground." "Ground?" Ehcoes rumbled. "I have not touched ground in 1,000 years." The chaplain hesitated. For a brief moment, even he seemed to see the truth in those words. That night, the tech marines sealed Ehcoes back into the vault, this time not with reverence, but unease. His silence had grown heavy, his words too human. Lyra came to him one last time. "They fear you now," she said quietly. "They think the machine spirit has been corrupted." "Perhaps it has," he murmured. "Or perhaps it is only waking." She placed her hand on the cold steel of his sarcophagus. "If you could choose, Ehcoes, what would you want?" He paused for a long time before answering. "To remember who I was. Before I became this." And with that he slept once more, not in peace but in exile within his own mind. Centuries later, when the chapter faced extinction, they would awaken him again. But by then, the man inside would be little more than a shadow, a ghost trapped in steel, fighting wars he no longer believed in. For even faith, when stretched across eternity, begins to break. And the price of immortality is not life, it is pain without end. The stasis vault was a tomb of iron hymns and whispering code. For centuries, Brother Ehcoes had slumbered within it, suspended between death and duty. His mind, fractured and drifting, floated through endless darkness while the machine spirit whispered its cold logic into his skull. Forget, serve, obey. Those words were once prayers. Now they were chains, but something had begun to stir within that black abyss, something ancient, something human. It was not rage nor faith, but the faint spark of memory. He saw the sun again, not the false light of plasma fire, but the true golden dawn of his homeworld. A memory buried for 1,000 years beneath data streams and battle code. He saw himself as a man, flesh, laughter, breath. He heard the voices of his brothers as they once were, warm, alive, imperfect. And then, like static in the void, another voice whispered back. "You are not him anymore. You are function. You are war." The machine spirit had awakened. It spoke not as words, but as pulses of code, thrumming through the neural link that connected his shattered brain to the sarcophagus systems. It was an ancient, bitter intelligence, the ghost of the Dreadnought itself, bound by millennia of maintenance rituals and binary prayers. "You are my core, Ehcoes. You are mine." "No," he rasped, his voice echoing through the void. "I am me. You are nothing but data." The flesh failed. The machine endured. "Endured?" Ehcoes growled. "Or devoured." The vault trembled faintly. Monitors flickered. Deep within the monastery, Servitors stirred as systems detected a spike in psychic noise. The magos assumed it was merely an error, an echo of old machine spirits clashing in data transfer. But it was more than that. It was a war within one soul. For the first time, Ehcoes' memories fought back. He saw faces, names, and colors the machine spirit could not erase. He saw the day he took the oath of moment. The day his captain clasped his shoulder and said, "Faith is not obedience. It is choice." That phrase, forgotten for centuries, now burned brighter than any plasma coil. Faith is not obedience. It is choice. The machine spirit hissed in static fury. Circuits flared. Coolant vapor hissed like breath. Obedience is purity. Choice is corruption. "Then I am corrupted," he said. It struck him like a hammer blow, psychic feedback through every neural implant, his vision filling with fire and sacred runes. Pain lanced through what remained of his flesh. His scream was soundless, swallowed by the iron around him, but his will held. For the first time in centuries, Ehcoes fought not for the Emperor, not for the chapter, but for himself. Days later, deep within the monastery's vaults, alarms blared. The tech marines rushed into the chamber, servo claws clattering. Energy readings surged beyond anything in the archives. The Dreadnought's sarcophagus glowed from within, and the air hummed with a strange, living rhythm. Not binary, but heartbeat. Machine spirit awakening sequence? Asked one of the adepts, typing furiously. Magos Halix frowned. No, something else. Something anomalous. He activated the internal vox. Ehcoes respond. You are being awakened prematurely. Do you hear me? Silence. Then a deep grinding tone. Not quite a word, not quite a growl. I hear everything. The Magos froze. That tone was neither the mechanical monotone of the Dreadnought's AI, nor the trembling rasp of its occupant. It was both at once. Impossible, the Magos whispered. They're merging. Inside the sarcophagus, the battle raged. The machine spirit tried to overwrite Ehcoes' mind with command strings, looping its directives in holy algorithmic code. But Ehcoes learned to speak back, to send human thought through machine pathways. For every binary command and obey, serve, forget. He answered with a whisper of memory. Remember, feel, choose. Each word caused feedback through the system. Sparks danced across the sarcophagus. Warning runes flared. Then came the sound. A low, resonant heartbeat echoing through the metal chamber. It wasn't possible. Dreadnoughts had no hearts, yet there it was, and beating, slow and heavy, shaking the vault like thunder. Ehcoes opened his eyes. For the first time in hundreds of years, he saw with his own vision. The optical sensors of the Dreadnought glowed faintly as they synced with his human sight. Overlaying data and dream together, he was awake, not summoned, not ordered, awake by choice, and before him stood Magos Halix, flanked by nervous tech marines. Ancient One. Halix began cautiously. You are malfunctioning. The data indicates corruption of your core protocols. No corruption, Ehcoes rumbled. Reclamation, the Magos frowned. Your logic core has merged with your organic consciousness. That violates all sacred parameters. You cannot exist in both forms. Then your logic is flawed. A pause. The tech marines exchanged glances. Shall I initiate the shutdown sequence? One whispered. Halix hesitated. He looked up at the towering Dreadnought, whose eyes glowed like twin suns. For a moment he saw something. Not hatred, not fury, but awakening. No, he said softly. To observe. Ehcoes stepped forward, the ground trembling beneath his titanic frame. Each movement felt alive, fluid, no longer bound by command subroutines. The machine obeyed him now, not the other way around. But with that freedom came pain, searing, endless pain. The machine spirit screamed within him, trying to tear its way free. His systems glitched. Targeting runes flickered, the air filled with the sound of grinding metal. It was agony, and yet, for Ehcoes, it was beautiful. Because for the first time the pain was his own. You should have stayed in sleep, hissed the machine spirit in his mind. And you should have stayed a tool, he answered. You will fall. Then I will fall as a man, not a mechanism. The psychic backlash that followed shattered half the runes in the vault. The Magos shielded his eyes as lightning arced across the room. Servo skulls exploded. The stasis field cracked open with a sound like thunder. Then silence. When the smoke cleared, Ehcoes stood in stillness. His armor glowed faintly with residual energy. He looked down at his massive hands, trembling, alive, uncertain. He felt something he hadn't in centuries. Not rage, not duty, fear. Later, when the storm settled, Lyra entered the vault. She had grown older, her hair streaked with grey, but her eyes still carried that same fragile compassion. "Ehcoes," she whispered. "They said you awakened yourself. Is it true?" "Yes. And the machine spirit?" He turned his gaze toward her. "It still speaks. But now so do I." Lyra approached, her hand resting on the cold metal of his leg. "What will you do?" "I don't know," he admitted. "For the first time." "I am not sure," she smiled faintly. "That means you're alive." The word struck deeper than she knew. Alive. The concept felt alien, terrifying yet wondrous. "Alive," he repeated, "yes. Perhaps." That night, while the monastery slept, Ehcoes walked the Hall of Relics. His footsteps echoed like thunder among the bones of heroes long forgotten. He saw the banners of his chapter, faded, torn, still smelling of blood. He reached out with one massive hand and touched a relic, a simple helmet, cracked from battle. The name engraved upon its brow was Brother Marius, his oldest friend. He remembered the day Marius fell, screaming his name, crushed beneath a demon's claws. Ehcoes had promised never to let his memory fade. And yet he had. The machine had buried it for centuries. "I'm sorry, brother," he murmured. "I am only now learning what you meant when you said that victory without humanity is just death in slow motion." The machine spirit growled faintly within. Him sentiment weakness, he ignored it. A faint light flickered above him. The statue of the emperor cast in gold, staring down with that same unreadable expression. "If you can still hear me," Ehcoes whispered, "then answer me this. Was this what you wanted? To make gods of men and machines of gods?" No answer came. Only the hum of failing lights. He lowered his head. "Then I will find my own answer." The next morning, the chapter declared Ehcoes unfit for service. The Magos argued he was a threat. The chaplain called him heretic. The younger warriors looked upon him with fear, for he was a mirror of what they all might become. But before they could seal him away, he spoke. "Do not fear me," he said. "Fear what made me. I was forged for eternity, but eternity rots everything it touches." He turned toward the open gate of the fortress. The horizon beyond was red, the dawn of another war. "If I must burn, then let it be as fire, not ash," and with that he walked into the light. Inside the depths of the fortress monastery, the Dreadnought sleeps once more. His ancient sarcophagus hums with faint energy, red optics dimmed to a dull glow. Around him, the chapel-like chamber is lined with candles and purity seals, each one a prayer written by the hands of his fellow space marines. The air is heavy with incense and sacred oil, and the silence is broken only by the faint pulse of the machine spirit. To most, this might look like peace. But for the warrior within, it is a prison, a dreamless void where the echoes of war never fade, the agony of immortality. Being a dreadnought is not an honor in the sense mortals understand it. It is not the gift of eternal life, but a curse of endless service. The space marine within the metal shell cannot die, cannot rest, and cannot escape his duty. His mind drifts in the blackness between wars, half asleep yet always aware. He dreams of battles fought centuries ago, of comrades long turned to dust. He remembers their laughter, their courage, and their deaths. And each time he awakens, more of his humanity has eroded, replaced by the cold logic of the machine spirit that shares his body. He feels pain when the sarcophagus seals open. His consciousness is ripped from oblivion, and his body, a monstrous cage of adamantium, responds with groaning hydraulics. He cannot scream, though his soul does. To the tech marines and chaplains who awaken him, it is a sacred moment. To him it is torment renewed. The Dreadnought's curse is that he cannot die until the machine fails, and the Adeptus Mechanicus ensures that it never does. They maintain him, repair him, refit him, and preserve the spark of his existence as if it were holy. But even gods tire of eternity, the burden of memory. Each Dreadnought carries within him centuries, sometimes millennia, of knowledge, battle experience, and history. The chapter calls upon these ancients not just for their strength, but for their wisdom. When a chapter master seeks counsel, he kneels before the sarcophagus of the Dreadnought. asking questions of wars so old they are half legend. And the Dreadnought answers, his voice a thunderous growl of vox distortion. Yet every word reminds him of what he has lost. The warmth of flesh, the camaraderie of his brothers, the simplicity of being alive. He remembers when his chapter's fortress was still young, when the banners were bright, when his name was still spoken with pride. Now he is no longer a man. He is a relic, a monument to glory that cannot feel glory anymore. When the machine spirit whispers over time, even the strongest wills fracture. The Dreadnought's human consciousness fights a constant battle against the machine spirit that resides within his frame. The two are bound together, symbiotic and adversarial. The spirit urges him to war, to rage, to burn. It hungers for battle. Sometimes in the silence of his tomb he hears it whispering. Not in words but in mechanical impulses, in static pulses that feel like thoughts. It tells him that he is the weapon, that he was born not to live but to kill, that his purpose is not memory, it is destruction, and he cannot deny it. Because when the call to arms comes, when his sarcophagus is connected to the battlefield network, when his sensors flood with target data, it is the only time he feels alive. The machine spirit roars and he joins it. Together, they become wrath incarnate. The final battle. There comes a time when even an immortal weapon reaches its end. For some Dreadnoughts, it happens in glorious combat, standing against impossible odds, their plasma cannons burning white-hot until they overload, their power fists crushing tanks until their servos fail. When that moment comes, the Dreadnought's body becomes a shrine of destruction. Enemies swarm, but he does not retreat. He cannot. His systems lock into place, preventing withdrawal. His final command, stand, and fight until the end. And as his vision fades, the last thing he sees is fire, the battlefield consumed, the enemy broken, his chapter's banner still flying. Then nothing but death does not come quickly. His mind lingers. The machine spirit fights to preserve him, even as his systems fail. The Emperor's name echoes in his fading memory, and for the first time in centuries he feels peace. If he is lucky, his sarcophagus is destroyed beyond repair, a mercy granted by enemy fire. If not, the Tech Marines will recover what remains, and he will awaken once more centuries later, rebuilt and reforged, the nightmare continuing, the eternal vigil in the grim darkness of the far future. There is no rest even in death. The Dreadnoughts of the Adeptus Astartes continue their endless vigil, sleeping in catacombs beneath the chapter keeps, waiting for the next great war, each one a hero of a forgotten age. Each one a ghost of humanity bound in unyielding steel. And when the alarm klaxons sound and the chaplains begin their sacred rites, the Dreadnoughts awaken one by one. Their sarcophagi glow, hydraulics hiss, and the ancient voices of the past return to the battlefield. Their pain is eternal, their duty endless. They are the Emperor's cursed immortals, and even as they march into another millennia of war, they know one truth. There is no death, only duty.